Sounds good. Okay, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Northern Middlesex Metropolitan Planning Organization. First item on our agenda is welcome and introductions. So I will turn it over to Shravanthi, I think, great, to read through the roll.
I'll do
Okay,
it.
okay,
I got it in
cool.
front of me.
Great, go ahead, Justin. Yep, sounds good.
Massachusetts Secretary of Transportation and MassDOT CEO Gina Fiandaca.
Yep, Derek Cravat here representing MassDOT Secretary and CEO Gina Fiandaca.
Okay, MassDOT Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver.
Brian Fallon representing Highway Administrator Gulliver.
Right. NMCOG Chair Andrew Delarier. NMCOG MPO Representative Pat Wojcik.
Here.
Good. LRTA Board Chair Tom Ball.
Here.
LRTA MPO Rep Karen Polio.
Here.
Karen. And Lowell City Council Representative to NMCOG and the MPO Dan Work. They do not see. Okay. That is the roll thing.
Okay, sounds good. Welcome, everybody. Next on our agenda is the approval of the January 25th, 2023 MPO meeting minutes. I'll ask for a motion and second to endorse these minutes as presented and sent around.
A motion to approve, Pat Wojcik.
Second, Karen Pulio.
Great, so motion having been made and seconded. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, go ahead and call the roll.
Derek Cravat,
Yes.
Brian Fallon,
Yes.
Pat Wojcik,
Yes.
Tom Baumel,
Abstain.
Karen Pulio.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is a status report on transportation improvement program projects under design and construction. So hand it over to District 4 to walk through these.
Hey,
Hey, there I am.
there you go, Tim.
Sorry, getting unmuted. Yeah, Tim Paris, District 4 planner. We've got a few items here. We have got 608-816 Lowell Drake Methuen resurfacing related work on Route 110. That has gotten a new add date of March of next year. 608-861 Westford Bridge rehabilitation, Stony Brook Road over Stony Brook. That has a new add date of September of 2024, which it was December of this year. And the next page, 607-887, that got a new add date of 8/10/24, and that just was pushed back a month from July. 608-774 Lowell Tewksbury Route 38 intersection improvements. That has a new tip cost. It's up almost $1 million. And that was all we have for you.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Any questions for Tim? Okay.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Justin. Yep. Yep.
Sure. I see I'm a little, well, more of a comment, I guess. I'm a little concerned about the Ward Bridge project being moved out a month. That means it's moving further and further into Q4 of 2024. So are there any concerns with this moving out of federal fiscal year 2024?
Hi, Justin. Yeah, this is Brian. I haven't heard any. We've had a few meetings. It's definitely moving in the right direction. So I think, yeah, that just 1 month move. I wouldn't be too concerned with it. I think they are, making the effort to advertise in 2024. And that would be design build project.
Yes. I mean, it's just what I mean. That's what we heard at tip readiness days, and I just get concerned when it moves. So it's the priority for the region.
It's on track.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. I don't see, is there anyone from District 3 on the call?
See anyone?
I don't see anyone, so we can move on. Next item is open forum, opportunity for comments from MPO members and community stakeholders in the public. Are there any comments at this time? Okay, seeing none. If you do have a comment during the meeting, you can feel free to put that in the chat or raise your hand and we'll be sure to call on you. The next item on the agenda is the Northern Middlesex MPO Title VI Plan presentation. So I'll hand it over to NMCOG staff to walk us through this one.
Let me just share my screen. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Belanger. I'm a transportation planner with the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments. And today I'll be giving a presentation on the update to our Title VI plan.
Jessica?
Yep.
Switch your display setting.
Oops. Hang on.
Right there.
This one?
No, under display settings. There you go. There you go. Perfect.
You can't see the notes, right? It's gone.
Right.
Thank you. So the agenda for today, I'll start off by providing an overview of the Title VI. I'll go over our objectives for the plan. I'll provide an update on the 2023 version, and then we'll finish up with questions and discussion. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Department of Transportation regulations are designed to ensure that no person in the United States based on race, color, or national origin is excluded from participation in, denied benefits of, or otherwise subjected to discrimination under any program that DOT financially assists with. Equal access helps to create opportunity and connect all persons and communities to transportation programs that are financially assisted by DOT, regardless of race, color, and national origin. The objectives of the Title VI analysis and report are to ensure that the level and quality of transportation services are provided in a non-discriminatory manner, promote full and fair participation in transportation decision-making without regard to race, color, or national origin, and ensure meaningful access to transportation programs for persons with limited English proficiency. The sources used in this plan update were the 2014 to 2018 American Community Survey, as well as the 2006 to 2010, and also 2020. On this graph, you'll see the municipalities within our region on the left-hand side, and then you'll see the population changes. Considerably, Lowell has experienced the highest population change in our region among almost all the other municipalities, but Lowell has the greatest growth. On this map, you'll see median household income by municipality. The y-axis represents the median household income in increments of 20,000, and the x-axis represents the median household income by municipality. The greatest increase took place in Dunstable, around 31%, Chelmsford, 21%, Drake at 21%, Billerica 21%, and Pepperell at 19%. The median household income in the town of Westford increased by 19%, along with the city of Lowell by 17%. The lowest increase occurred in the towns of Tewksbury and Tyngsboro. This map displays the minority populations across the NMCOG region. You can see significantly that Lowell has the greatest census tracts of different minorities, and using the distribution here, you can see the rate change, and this is above the regional average. When Lowell is removed from the mapping, you'll notice that there are high percentages of other minority populations across our region, specifically in areas like Westford, Chelmsford, and there's some shading in Billerica and also Drake. This pie chart displays the population estimates by ancestry in the greater Lowell region. The highest percentage of ancestry in the region are Irish, Italian, English, and the second highest percentage of ancestral origins are French, Canadian, German, and Polish. The remaining highest percentages of ancestral origin are Portuguese, African, Greek, and Scottish, as displayed on the graph. This is a map of the LRTA transit service area. All of the NMCOG communities are recipients of the LRTA services, in addition to the communities of Acton, Carlisle, Groton, Maynard, and Townsend. The LRTA has some routes that serve Andover, Bedford, Burlington, Wilmington, all displayed on the map. This map displays the environmental justice criteria as put forth by the state of Massachusetts. This map displays the annual median household income, minority populations that make up 40% or more of the population, households where 25% or more are limited English speaking, which means that they speak English less than very well, and minorities that make up 25% or more of the population with an annual median household income, which the neighborhood is located in an area where there is 150% of the median household income on the state level. Using census tract data, we were able to map the allocation of TIP projects with the environmental justice factors attributed. And you can see based on the graph, so all the numbers represent TIP projects. So these are projects that have been programmed on the TIP through 2023 to 2027. And specifically, this is with a zoomed in focus on Lowell. And we'll get to that in just a minute. Cool. So here you can see Lowell zoomed in a little bit more detail, and Lowell significantly meets almost all of the criteria of an environmental justice population. The areas in pink and also displayed in red demonstrate a higher population of people that are limited English proficiency, and they're the only municipality in our region that meets all of the criteria based on the environmental justice factors put forth by the state. This is significant for the allocation of our TIP spending. You can see based on the pie chart here lists all 9 of our communities and where the majority of the TIP projects are taking place. It seems between Billerica and Westford, very few projects in Pepperell, Dunstable, Tingsboro, and there's 2 projects in Lowell. Within the area, we can identify that Lowell has a significant environmental justice community, and we want to be doing more work in those communities. And we've talked a little bit about that in the plan as we plan forward. I'll also share the details on how to file a complaint. We're in the process of updating the translations for the process for filing a complaint, as well as the notices. We will begin a public comment period this Friday, that's February 24th, and the 21-day comment period will run through March 14th. And comments can be submitted on our website, and Justin will include those communications in his email today. Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Any questions for Jessica? Comments? Okay. Seeing none. So this is an action item, correct? Is this a action to put it out for public comment?
Derek, we have a report associated with the presentation. We'd like to have the NPO consider releasing the draft form of it, and it's up on our, it will be up on our website.
Got it. Okay, sounds good. So given that, I will ask for a motion and second to release this report for public comment period.
So move, Karen Pulio.
A
Thank
second,
you.
Pat Wojcik.
Okay, so motion having been made and seconded. Open it up one more time for questions or comments. Okay, seeing none, go ahead and call the roll.
Derek Abad,
Yes.
Brian Fallon,
Yes.
Pat Wojcik,
Yes.
and Tom Lowell,
Yes.
and Karen Pulio.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Next on the agenda is the performance measures. So I think we have PM2 on there first, which is pavement and bridge condition performance targets. We have Jack Moran with us here from MassDOT's Highway Division. Will walk us through those targets, and then we'll ask for a vote to endorse at the end of the presentation. But for now, I'll hand it over to Jack.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the time, members. Am I sharing? Oh, there it is. Or is,
I could share too, Jack, if you need me.
so you can do it first?
Yeah.
No, I'll get it. I'll get it up. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, let me give you permission.
Okay.
Should be good.
I come over okay?
Yep.
All right, great. So we'll start off just quick overview of the infrastructure condition measures within the federal performance management system. As we are or have just emerged from the first full performance period, and we're setting here today to identify our targets for the second full performance period. We'll just do a little bit of a review of how we did with the targets that we set on the first round. And then we'll move into this pavement itself, some regional considerations, and then eventually our targets, and follow up with the same for bridge. So the measures themselves. Infrastructure condition within the federal performance management system is currently specific to just pavement and bridge. Certainly the bulk of our state of good repair investments within the STIP and CIP are pavement focused and bridge focused. It's real, they really are they have the biggest budget footprint, so makes sense for this initial focus to be on those asset classes. On the pavement side and the bridge side, it's exclusive to the national highway system. And the national highway system for the split ownership in Massachusetts, and I'll try to explain where and what percentage as we go through this. But on the pavement side, the interstate's exclusively owned by MassDOT. The non-interstate NHS is a shared ownership statewide. That split looks somewhere around, whether you're using lane mile or center line mile, 2/3 state, 1/3 municipal. Again, based on which standard of measure you use, be it center line or lane mile. The big news with the adoption of these pavement federal measures is the advent of a national condition indices. Pavement is measured a variety of ways. I think there's a research project wrapping up with our colleagues in the Office of Transportation Planning that looks at just that topic amongst some regions and municipalities within Massachusetts, the different indices in use. In general, they're all basically a composite index for the most part. Some towns and some states still use exclusively a ride-based measure, which most commonly is in terms of International Roughness Index, IRI. That's, as one might infer, just the ride quality itself as expressed with basically undulations in a vehicle. A composite measure will take that ride factor, but then also layer in other deficiencies such as rutting from the wheel path, cracking, so the visual distresses of cracking, and then other factors including raveling. So MassDOT has used pavement serviceability index for quite some time, long before I was ever working in this arena, but our capital plan's based on PSI. It's a composite indices, and part of the challenge for us that I think we are getting a handle on is kind of making those two indices speak to one another, so that we're able to We maintain targets through state performance management for PSI. We maintain targets for federal performance management using the federal measure. And it's just a structure that we're kind of wedded to, and we will continue to learn more about federal measure and how it relates to our own. There'll be a couple slides in the latter part of this presentation that will give a little more insights into that. So one critical thing to know, we are setting targets here. There are minimum condition thresholds established by federal highway. There is one for the interstate system, and that's basically that no state should have over 5% poor, and we'll look at that in a minute. On the bridge side, again, national highway system bridges only. I think the main point on the bridge measure is that it looks at bridge area. So for a long time, we had been tracking the number of structurally deficient bridges in the state. We still do that. That's another companion measure that we use. The area factor gives us more insight into what's going on within the individual bridges themselves, because effectively what we do is we sum up the total area of the National Highway System Bridge Inventory, which is about 29 million square feet of bridges. That number is essentially, if you were looking at the bridge from above directly down, it's that surface area that we travel upon, be it asphalt or concrete. The average National Highway System bridge is about 14,000 square feet, but there are bridges in the inventory well in excess of 100,000 square feet. This measure essentially takes either the good or the poor area and divides it by the total area. You get your percentage, be it good or poor. Minimum condition threshold for bridge is the percent of poor area, and that minimum condition measure is our target is 10%. We've been in excess of that for some time. We'll get into that in a little bit, but that certainly is one of our main focuses, both in this full performance period and beyond, is getting below that 10% and staying there, because there are somewhat of a punitive result of us being in excess of that target, that minimum condition threshold, and that is that we have a kind of essentially a enforced minimum amount of federal aid within the core formula that we need to invest in the national highway system until such time that we get below it. I think in real terms, we would be spending that money anyways if we found ourselves in that condition state, but it does force our hand in some ways that we still need to spend that money, regardless of BIL or NGB. That is a core number that we will be programming, and you can see it in the development of the STIP with our target for NHS on system. So as I said in the outset here, we are emerging from the first full performance period, and a slide coming up now that looks a little bit at how we actually did within these measures. So hopefully this is illustrative. Green means we either met or surpassed our target. Yellow is indicative of a gap in the wrong direction. And if there is no color coding here, then that basically is for the target columns, or in the case of the actuals for 2019 is a result of a phased implementation of the measures. We're including the data here because it's important to just see where we were and where we're going. I think the thing I would add, the narrative here is that, especially on the pavement side, we're basically getting to know this measure a little bit. To get in the weeds a little, the phased adoption on the non-interstate side entailed IRI based only targets for 2019 and 21. Bit of a step backwards for us, and it really is just a phase in for other states that may not have been collecting full distress data as we have for some time. This next full performance period that we'll be setting targets for now will be basically full distress. So it's a language that we can understand. And the final point I'll just make on these measures is it's a short time frame. 4 years seems like a long time, and but in effect we have a 5-year CIP, a 5-year STIP. Much of that is programmed. the majority of it's programmed, in fact, which means we don't have a lot of line items in there that represent future investments that we have not identified yet. So when it comes down to setting a 2-year target, you're on the infrastructure side, it's comparatively a little bit easier than some of the modernization measures, where we're trying to just basically foresee what the difference between deterioration and investment will result in. The investment piece, as I mentioned, is in some way set in stone. We need to be able to plan ahead on projects, put the design resources in place, budget accordingly, and we do that on a 5-year basis. So a 2-year target is the investments that are going to result in that improvement or deterioration are in construction right now for the most part. Similarly, on the 4-year side, a resurfacing project will likely take 2 years, a bridge replacement project 3 to 4 years maybe. So in a real sense, we can really hone in on what these targets will be just by basically what our planning decisions have been in the past or continue to be. So just a little bit about how we approach this. There's modeling involved in the deteriorations, and we've taken some steps forward on how we integrate condition data with planning data. And I'll try to color that in a little bit as we go here, but just a little background on how we set targets. So shifting to pavement here, this is just a regional breakdown of the interstate system. Interstates are owned entirely by MassDOT. We program them through the STIP, through the interstate program there, and then for the Western Turnpike and Metropolitan Highway System interstates, those are invested by the CIP cost centers from PAYGO Capital. Non-interstate, as I mentioned earlier, there's a shared ownership on non-interstate NHS. It does vary from region to region, but again, a number to kind of keep in your head is basically 1/3, 2/3 statewide. So within the northern Middlesex boundaries, there's approximately 3% of the interstate system. Now that is entirely MassDOT owned. The non-interstate system is almost comparable 4% of the state total, with about 1/3 of it owned by municipalities. Now, the table here is condition in terms of MassDOT pavement serviceability index. I'm probably hammering these home a little bit, but I just want to make that point because one of the limitations of the new federal measure is we can't easily talk about regional conditions using that data as yet. I think as in the coming years, we'll be able to do a little better. But as I mentioned, there is a correlation between the MassDOT serviceability index and the federal measure. There's some variation in effect. What we have seen in kind of qualitative terms is some of the pavements that we would think would be excellent and good in our standard would be in the fair category of the federal measure. Some of the pavements we would consider to be poor would also be in the fair condition measure. So it's at the end of the day, we can use both. But because we weren't able to speak to you in conditions with the federal measure, we have here PSI. Now, I think there's relatively good alignment with municipally owned NHS within Northern Middlesex as compared to statewide. A little bit higher on the poor side, but overall, from what we've seen from region to region, it's not very far off at all. And as combined ownership, so that's both what DOT owns and what the municipality owns, it's comparatively better than the statewide numbers. Moving on to targets. Basically, the narrative here, again, we have a % good, which is the top end, and a % poor, which is the lower end. You want your % good to be higher, your % poor to be lower, of course. Our target setting here, the philosophy is that we are hoping for generally a status quo, though we did see a slight decrease within the first full performance period, a drop about 0.5%. Again, we're just gaining some familiarity here. We set the target to be 70-70 for 23-25. For all these targets, we have the ability to reset the latter target at the mid-performance period. We'll certainly do so if numbers bear out differently than we had expected them to. From the perspective of, as I mentioned earlier, with programming, we've had some pretty good success, I'd say real good success with putting out lower cost pavement preservation projects, particularly on our limited access roadways, which include the interstate system. So those projects are usually a more not a rehabilitative treatment per se. It's probably a thinner lift of asphalt, but it buys a considerable amount of time. It extends that life cycle, flattens that curve out for us so that we're able to go a lot longer before one of those rehabilitative actions. And that effectively decreases our lane mile cost, which allows us to do more lane miles per year. In the coming 4 or 5 years of the plan, we will be taking on some more comprehensive projects around the state. Those projects have a more higher lane mile cost, which conversely reduces the number of lane miles we'll get to. So we don't believe that we'll see a drop in conditions, but at the same time, we don't see a vast improvement in the near term. What these projects are, they're not expansion projects or anything like that. It's just that when we try to do a preservation project, we take into account the context, and we might not be getting involved in drainage work unless it's entirely necessary, or safety upgrades. If the corridor doesn't need new guardrail systems, we're not going to put them in. The corridors that we have planned in the coming years will probably have a little bit higher lane mile costs based on the needs for those, primarily those two systems, but could also be bridges as well. When we do get out on an interstate job, if we're going to be out there for 3-4 years, we do try to get any sort of bridge preservation work done in conjunction with the paving so that we're out of there until the next time it rolls around. The next projects will probably have more bridge work and thus a higher lane mile cost. So on the poor side, we had set a somewhat conservative low end target. So again, we want to have the poor as low as possible. On the interstates, there is that minimum condition threshold of 5%, so a state should not exceed that amount. First performance period, we set our target to be 4 as a way to kind of, make sure we were targeting a condition that would keep us well clear of that minimum condition threshold. What we've seen is that our interstates are performing very well with the federal measure, and we set concurrently, basically as a response, set that 2%, basically slash our target in half, and are shooting to keep it well below that minimum condition threshold. So those are our interstate targets. Moving on to non-interstate, I think opening remark is essentially that, as with the interstates, we are gaining familiarity with the measure, so we're not looking to get very aggressive with these targets. But the non-interstate system is quite a bit different than the interstate side, in that non-interstate NHS includes both limited access roadways. 3 comes to mind. 1, these are roadways that in part function much like a interstate in a real sense, but you can contrast that with a more urban roadway that might likely have sidewalks and other needs beyond just the pavement. Those roadways are a completely different animal for us to deliver. When we go out to resurface a roadway of that character, we're looking at the pavement, of course, but we're also looking at the cross section, at complete street elements, other factors that might need modernization as we're out there restoring or preserving the pavements. Those projects take longer to deliver, cost more, and they're just a different character of work. That's another factor here where we're still trying to maximize the utility of these non-interstate pavement dollars to maintain the system, but also achieve these other policy and other objectives through these projects. So again, percent good, we're basically flatlining it there, and that's part of the reason why is we have made some pretty good achievements in terms of condition gains within the non-interstate network in recent years, probably over the past 5 years, but I think at this point, we're hoping to keep it where it is. Percent poor, our roadways on the non-interstate side are in good shape. The federal measure, we're capping it at 5% here. But again, in both cases, we're going to keep that option open for reevaluating our 2025 target at the mid-performance period. Moving on to bridge. This chart provides you with the National Highway System inventory across the state by region and ownership. And you'll see that by and large, the National Highway System bridge inventory is owned by the DOT. In northern Middlesex, there's 107 National Highway System bridges, 5 of which are owned by municipalities, and that's about 3% of the statewide inventory. In terms of condition, so this, I think there's a pretty good story to tell, slightly higher on the poor side, but on the upper side, well above statewide condition for percent good. And on to targets. So I think there's an interesting narrative in place here, although the targets might not look all that exciting. I think there's context. We obviously are entering a period of bridge investment within Massachusetts that is based on 2 major funding sources. One being the Next Gen Bridge program, the GANS financing that was introduced authorization within the 2021 Transportation Bond Bill, $1.25 billion. The second, more recent, is the 2022 Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Bridge Formula Program. Massachusetts was a leading recipient of those funds. The Bridge Formula Program within the BIL was a formula program that considered both percentage of backlog as defined as the poor bridges and fair bridges within the state, as well as construction costs. So we effectively recognized both the cost of doing business in Massachusetts and our native conditions as well. And the end result was a amount of about $1.7 billion of new additional bridge spending that will be apportioned through 2026. And these are basically the HIPBR funds that you see within the STIP. So the combined total of these funds is approximately 2.7, 2.8 round numbers here, which is certainly a large investment and a good step forward. I think it's important to kind of put in context this investment. Certainly, this state is no stranger to a bridge program. We not so long ago completed the AVP program, which was kicked off 2008, 2009 at $3 billion. So there is the time value of money to consider, with construction costs being much different than they were 12 years ago. But nonetheless, the combined BIL NGB funding will be put to good use. And how is it being put to good use? There's really 2 categories of bridge spending that I think are important. There's the preservation side and the capital rehab replacement categories of projects. Now, we need to do both. On a given year, about 50 individual bridges become structurally deficient or poor. So we have effectively 12% of our national highway system structurally deficient, poor, and every year that number is growing when you don't look at our improvements. But what we need to be able to do is essentially match the rate of deterioration or reduce the rate of deterioration while we drive down that backlog. In terms of timeline, we had a pretty good running start to program BIL funding because we had already started building project list prioritization projects, getting backlog projects up and going again, et cetera. These projects will start hitting the street. The rehabilitation and replacements come 24 and 25 and 26. Now, as we mentioned earlier, there's a lag time before a project gets advertised, gets built, we inspect it, data goes back to DC. We kind of see that rehab replacement element of our bridge program really picking up in 26 and 27 in terms of outcomes. What does that mean? It means that percent good target, you're only going to increase that by really heavy investments. You're not going to, preservation will not increase your percent good of your inventory. It will help you to keep it where it is, but it will not increase it. That's the rationale for why we're setting our percent good static through 25. And we hope to see that number creep up into the third full performance period beyond 2025. Kind of converse is true on the percent poor. The rehabilitations and replacements will get us out of that hole. Now, percent poor is that minimum condition threshold of 10. We really want to get out of that zone, get down below 10 and stay below there. So we have, full reign on federal aid. And to get to that point, we have to both stem the tide of deterioration, but make those reductions in backlog, mitigate the poor bridges. What's causing bridge deterioration in Massachusetts? There's a lot of things, but first and foremost, our bridges are 16 years older than the national average. You couple that with the seasonality, which is not as present this year, perhaps, but it certainly gives us a good reminder of why we are where we are. I think that what we'll see this backlog start to really make drive down would be probably 26, 27, as I mentioned. And because this is an area measure, the bigger bridges have an outsized influence on it. So once we complete a big bridge, you'll actually see this number start to come down. But similar story with the percent good. Our preservation projects, which are already hitting the streets as it is, we've had some projects come out this year in 23 and every year to follow. So this character of project is multi-location, 5, 6, 7, 8 structures along a corridor. And the type of work here for a preservation project would be repair of deteriorated substructure. So where you see exposed rebar, we'd be repairing that, coating the substructure, making any steel repairs, perhaps painting the steel. And then ultimately, we always want to be able to resurface that bridge deck, get those bridge joints in so we don't continue that cycle of deterioration from the moisture and de-icing salts getting into the structural elements. Those projects, don't doubt you'll see them out there, and we'll be continuing to do them. And that's really what we're saying here, is that we want that to keep that number where it is. We don't want the backlog, the percent poor, to grow. We want to keep it where it is until these rehab and replacement projects complete, and we actually drive that number down below 10. That is my last slide, but I am certainly happy to dive into any questions or comments from the group.
Great. Thank you, Jack. Any questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none. So this is something that all MPOs are required to take action on to endorse these targets, similar to what we did for the safety targets last month. So if there aren't any questions, I'll ask for a motion and second to endorse the state pavement and bridge targets as presented by Jack.
Oh, sorry, I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Jessica. Yeah.
Approximately when do you think the MassDOT mobility dashboard will be updated? Because we use those PSI rates often.
The mobility dashboard. That
So
has
I think this-
information in it.
I'm sorry.
and
So the mobility dashboard has the PSI measurements in it.
Yes.
I will reach out to OTP today because we definitely have a fresh layer. It may just be a versioning issue, but We'll look into it right after this call.
Excellent, thank you.
You got it.
Thanks, Jack. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to endorse the statewide pavement and bridge targets?
So move Karen Pulio.
Second, Tom Bommel.
Okay, the motion having been made and seconded, go ahead and call the roll.
Yeah, thank you. Derek Kabot,
Yes.
Ryan Fallon,
Yes.
Pat Wojcik,
yes,
Tom Bowles,
Yes.
and Karen Pulio.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds good. So next on our agenda, I think, is the PM3 system performance measures discussion. I know, Justin, we also have the TIP readiness days on the agenda. I wanted to offer, we did in Merrimack Valley, we pushed the PM3 to March just in the interest of time. I didn't know if that's something, depending on how folks are feeling, if you prefer to do the TIP readiness updates first and then we can push that, or if you want me to present, I'm happy to. It's about a 20-minute presentation, but I just want to make sure we have enough time because I know that the readiness day updates are important to show. So just throwing it out there. Any thoughts on timing for folks?
We do have several other agenda items, so I'm fine with moving it to March if the NPO members agree.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's plan on that. Then I think it's probably helpful to just stagger it. So we have the PM3 for March. So yeah, I think it's good to move into the TIP readiness updates then.
We're gonna start with an amendment.
Yes, yep, my mistake. Yep, I have the agenda up now. So next item is TIP Amendment 3. So I'll hand it over to you, Justin, to cover this one.
Okay, so on your screens, a summary of excuse me, proposed federal fiscal year 2023 to 2027 TIP Amendment number 3. And this involves several changes on both the highway and the transit sides of our current TIP. So just going through it, Amendment 3 involves adding approximately $786,000 to cover a cost increase for a bridge preservation project, or it's actually 2 bridges on I-495 in Tewksbury, one over the Route 38 and one over Route 133. And so the cost estimates increased, and since it's scheduled to be advertised in May, we need to amend the TIP to ensure it's fully funded for when it's advertised for construction. And you see the proposed amendment in this first table here, the current programming, approximately 5.1 million. It's gone up to 5.9 million. So that's the highway project that is part of the amendment. Oops, too far. Okay. So on the transit side, there are three different pieces to this amendment. So we're proposing adding a new project in federal fiscal 23 to upgrade the parking system at Gallagher Terminal at the parking garage there for a total cost of $110,000. And this doesn't use any federal funding. This is fully state funded, and I believe the federal portion was amended in the TIP in 2022. So we're adding the state portion here in 2023. The second piece, we are adjusting the TIP to add $100,000 in state funding to cover a match for replacing of 2 hybrid buses for the LRTA. And if you remember last year, we amended this project to add the federal piece in the 2022. So we're making sure we have the right amount of state funding to cover that match in 2030. And the third piece of the LRTA section is that the LRTA proposes to remove the automated passenger counter project from the tip. So currently it's programmed using 5307 and 5339 FTA funding sources in 23. The scope has changed on this project, so there's a little bit of a delay. So we're proposing to remove this project from the tip in 23. It is actually on the LRTA's CIP for in their 24 to 28 CIP. So they'll be looking to program this as we develop the next tip, the 24 to 28 tip, and the table below the table here shown on your screen basically shows the removal of approximately $300,000 or total of $300,000 as we remove the project from the tip. So those are the 4 different pieces of this amendment. And today the proposal is we would like the NPO to consider voting to release this amendment as a draft for 21 days. And if this amendment is released, we'll set up a virtual public meeting date, likely March 7th. And also any comments can be emailed to me or mailed to our office, or call me. We'll have all the information up on our website as well. And that's the amendment as proposed, and we can take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Any questions for Justin on the amendment? Okay, seeing none, I will ask for a motion and second to release this out for public comment as described.
So move, Pat Wojcik.
Seconded, Tom
Okay.
Bummel.
Great, thank you. So motion having been made and seconded, go ahead and call the roll, Justin.
Okay, Derek Kabak,
Yes.
Brian Fallon,
Yes.
Pat Wojcik,
Yes.
Tom Bowman,
Yes.
and Karen Polio. That's a thumbs up. You got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right, so next item on the agenda is the federal fiscal year 2024 to 2028 TIP development, financial summary of TIP readiness days. So hand it over to Justin again.
So I'm gonna have Shrivanti
Shrivanti.
talk you through this, and we're moving on from our current tip to our next tip.
Thank you,
Sounds good.
Justin.
You're welcome.
Last month, Justin presented the timeline of development of the next step, which is federal fiscal year 2024 to 2028, which goes into effect in October. Since then, we've had few updates. So we met with MassDOT and we have received guidance and financial information, and we discussed the preliminary recommendations for programming of projects. So first, I would like to go over the financial information, which is used in the development of TIP. And this includes the target of how we program the projects. The table that you see here is the financial information, and I will go through the table now. So the first column includes the federal proposed apportionment that the state receives each year for the upcoming TIP. And the next portion, and the next column is the planned redistribution, which is $50 million each year, which is received in August. And the next column to that includes the accelerated bridge program grants repayments, and the repayment ranges from $93 to $133 million and is repaid by 2026. And this is subtracted from the total available funding for each year until 2026. Moving on to the next column is the proposed funding for STEP, and the column next to that is the funding for current STEP. So when we see an increase of about 11 to 16% for the years 2024 to 2027. And we develop projects with the earmarked funding under different programs such as Highway Division Program and TIP funding for regional priorities. So TIP funding for regional priorities is where we get our target funds. And when we compare 2024 to 2028 with the current TIP regional priorities, the first 3 years are level funded, and in 2027, there is $53 million, which is about 15% increase. And this is because of the GANS repayment. Now, moving on to the next table, which is right below this bigger table, is our regional targets. The first column here is our federal aid apportionment. The second column is the state match. The third one is the total regional target funding. So our region receives about 3.9% of the total regional priority. And each year this goes from about $11 million to $14 million. And when we compare this with the current TIP, first 3 years are level funded. And in 2027, there is about $2 million as target, which is 15% increase. And again, this is due to the GANS repayment. I will next talk about recommendations from TIP Readiness Day, but before that, I would like to pause and see if there are any questions on developing targets.
Any questions? Okay. Seeing none.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So moving on to recommendations from TIP Readiness Day. This small table on the right corner is the financial summary that we just saw. And I will now share the results of TIP Readiness Day. TIP Readiness Day meeting was between the NMCOG staff and MassDOT to discuss the status of current and eligible TIP projects and any recommendations for programming the upcoming TIP. So this list is based on the recommendations from that meeting, and there are no fiscal constraints. And this is not the final list of programming either. I will now go over the projects and recommendations. So first of all projects are on track. Westford rehabilitation of Boston Road is in 75% design stage, and the recommended year is 2024. Lowell reconstruction and related work on VFW Highway is in 75% design stage, and the recommended year is 2025. Chelmsford traffic signal installation at Route 110 and Route 495. The recommended year is 2025. Billerica intersection improvements at Boston Road, Route 3A, Lexington Street, and Glad Valley Road is in 75% design stage. Recommended year is 2025. And this project was previously 2026, so it has moved to 2025. Chelmsford improvements on Chelmsford Street is programmed over 2 years, 2026 and 2027. Tewksbury intersection improvements at Main Street, Pleasant Street, and North Street, East Street. The recommended year is 2027. Lowell connector reconstruction, Pawtucket Street corridor improvements, Westford Route 110, and Chelmsford Vinyl Square safety improvements are all, for all of these projects, the recommended year is 2028. And for Lowell Church Street two-way conversion and Chelmsford improvements on Route 3A, it is 2029. So 2024 projects are all on track. And in 2025, it is over-programmed, and 2026 seems under-programmed because of the Billerica intersection improvements moving a year ahead. So as I mentioned earlier, that's why it looks like that. Now moving on to the second table that's right below the first one is the state program of projects. And this list is, this is a list of projects that are out of target. So Lowell Rookie Bridge replacement, Billerica Phase 1 of Yankee Doodle Bike Path construction, and Chelmsford Bridge replacement are all 2024. Westford Bridge replacement, Stony Brook Road over Stony Brook, and the Draycote Safe Streets for Safe Routes to School program, Westford Interstate maintenance and related work on I-495 are all 2025. And finally, Tewksbury Bridge replacement North Street over I-495 is in 2028. So this is the summary of the recommendations from TIP Readiness Day. And in the next MPO meeting, we will be presenting the TIP scenarios for approval by the MPO. I can take any questions now.
Thanks, Travanti. So the 2026 amount, that Chelmsford project that's AC'd, you kind of, so you've changed the amounts there that are proposed program, right? So it says 10.8 million in 26 and about 1 million in 2027.
Yeah, I mean, it's not financially constrained at this point.
Yeah.
Right. This is just sort of
This
a
is
setup
just
a decision.
This is just an
Right.
exercise on design progress, and we'll
Right.
address that.
Right, okay. Okay. Any questions? And so the idea is for next month to present potential options for programming, right? And
That's
fiscal
right.
constraint to show options that the MPO has to fund different kind of scenarios of projects. But interesting how, yeah, there is a project that could move up, that Bill Ricca project, but of course would put 2025 out of constraint. So potential decision there about whether to prioritize that one over the other 25 projects or things like that. So I think that's what folks can expect, is just another sort of table that looks at these, right? Yep.
Yeah, there'll be decisions to make on 2025, 2026, and then there'll be
Yep.
decision to make on 2028.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good. Great. Well, thanks, Travanti. This is a good presentation and definitely sums up the results well. So appreciate it and look forward to the discussion next month. Next on the agenda is the federal fiscal year 2024 Unified Planning Work Program Development Timeline. Hand it over to NMCOG staff.
I'll take that one.
Okay, sounds good.
Quick here. So on your screen, development schedule for the federal fiscal year 2024 Unified Planning Work Program, and for those of you new to the process, UPWP. It's a document outlining the tasks that are undertaken by MPO staff over a 1-year kind of cycle. And so this document will includes a lot of the tasks that we just discussed today, including like the Type 6, the development of the TIP, those TIP amendments I talked about, the performance-based planning efforts that Jack Moran provided updates on for you today. And so this month is kind of the beginning of our process of developing the next work program. And so today we announced the schedule, and we begin reviewing guidance from our federal and state partners. We're reviewing project proposals from a call for projects that we sent out to municipalities last month, and we're also looking at ideas we've heard through our Envision 2050 outreach for any kind of studies that we may want to include as part of our next work program. And if you look at the work program we're in now, we have a lot of money geared toward Envision 2050, which is our long-range transportation plan. Well, the next work programs, we're not going to be developing that plan. It'll be more of a maintenance and the implementation of that. So we'll have funding for a more diverse set of projects. And, you know, some of the things we may look at are electric vehicles or some sort of complete streets type work. So looking at the timeline, so last month, just pretty much right after we held our our last NPO meeting. So we participated in a meeting between MassDOT and MARPO, which is the Mass Association of Regional Planning Agencies. So it's us and all of our sister agencies. And we met to discuss narrative and financial guidance for the UPWP development. And so we're here in February. We're talking about the timeline. We're considering our call for projects, and we are currently reviewing the budget for our next year's UPWP, which I will present in March, and along with next month we'll look at the budget, and we'll start developing a set of tasks for our next work program, which will probably be presented in April to the NPO. And then we come to May, where we will present the draft work program to the NPO. We will consider releasing it for a public comment period. Excuse me. And then once that comment period ends, we will get again in June, hear any comments that we receive on the work program, on the draft document, and the NPO will vote to whether to endorse the federal fiscal year 2024 UPWP. Once endorsed, we'll post the endorsed UPWP on our website. We'll distribute it to our federal, state, and all of our regional stakeholders for review. And in October 1 of 2023, the document should go into effect. So are there any questions on this preliminary schedule for developing the UPWP?
Thanks, Justin. I don't have any questions. Any questions from members? Others? Okay. Seeing none. Thanks, Justin. Timeline looks good. Next on the agenda is other business. Is there any other business to bring before the NPO today? Okay. Seeing none. There's an item on there for next meeting date. So the next meeting is currently scheduled for March 22nd, 2023. At which we'll do the PM3 measures, and we'll also have a presentation on the TIP preferred scenario. So definitely an important meeting. Any other business? Seeing none. So with that, I will ask for a motion and second to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Tom Baumel.
Second, Pat Wojcik.
Okay, I think without objection, we are adjourned. So thank you, everybody, and we will see you in March. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.